Hey guys, Elizabeth, the curly-haired country gal here. I had the immense pleasure of having Monty, the Suburban Sodbuster, out here a couple weeks ago to help me convert my LANGSTROTH Hive to a Layens hive. The hive is now in the Sun and Moon hive, so I thought about making a bet with Monty to see who was going to get stung the most during this process. So stick around to the very end and you'll find out who got stung the most. The queen and the brood were the big things that we needed to get transferred over. So the good news was that it was easy to get everything transferred over. The bad news was what we found was a queen laid by a worker, which is not a viable queen, which equals a doomed colony. I learned 4 helpful lessons, or I'll call them tips, that I'll share along the way. Let's do this thing. Now this process was actually really easy, but that wasn't necessarily a good thing. So this is actually part 1 of how we converted the hive over. So as you would imagine, step 1 was getting suited up. I put on my Comfort Pro jacket that I just got that I'm really happy about. I really like to support companies that are here in the US and that don't have material sourced from China. And so I found Comfort Pros and the jacket's been great so far. They didn't pay me to say that. Now, after I got suited up, one tip that Monty told me was that bees don't like the color black. At least many people think that. Maybe because one of their greatest dangers consists of black bears. So I didn't have bee gloves. I just had work gloves that were black on the inside. And he said, oh yeah, bees don't like that. And so I went and I just put rubber gloves over them. So I felt kind of silly, but I didn't get stung on the hand. So, and then that night I went and ordered some bee gloves from Comfort Pro. So we got the smoker going. Monty had a great trick for getting his smoker lit. It'll be in a later video where I'll talk about that. But he was really gracious in helping my son to be able to get to practice it and get the smoke coming out, and which he loved. And during this whole process, my 4 kids were with us, and they loved it when Monty gave them one of the frames of honey from the LANGSTROTH Hive, and they got to just eat fresh honey straight from the comb. What a cool experience for kids to have. So then step 2 was just to go ahead and take apart the LANGSTROTH Hive. He went ahead and put a little bit of smoke on the hive itself. We'll come back to that idea of smoke. So it was pretty sealed together, but we found a ton of propolis as we were going through it. Now, this hive went completely unattended for 2 whole years. This is going on the 3rd year. And so I'm confident that the previous owner treated the bees. I'm as sure as I can be that the bees that are in this hive are not the original bees. So I'm guessing that those bees died out at some point or maybe swarmed. Anyway, my point is I'm guessing that the bees that are in this hive are local bees. And they were actually pretty calm. I was surprised. My daughter did get stung twice. She got stung on the forehead, and then as we were looking at the bee sting, we didn't get far enough away, and she got stung right near her tear duct. Poor thing. But she's okay. She's not very excited about bees right now, but she's gonna be okay. And if you're new to bees like I am, Monty told me that it's better to scrape the stinger off than to try and pull it out because it's barbed, and pulling out can just release more of the venom. I had been seeing ants going in and out of the hive, and so it wasn't a surprise that when we finally got the top peeled off of the hive, we found a beautiful colony of ants, which was very satisfying to get out of the beehive. And as Monty and others have said, the ants are mainly a nuisance for the beekeeper and not the bees. So it's kind of neat to see their colony, and it was still nice to get that. So we just took apart the boxes one at a time, collecting the propolis, inspecting the frames. There was some honey on it, which was great. So they had enough throughout the winter to survive. So the reason that we were going to convert some frames was because of the brood. So we didn't need to worry about converting the honey the honeycomb with just honey in it for the bees, because they can build it out pretty quickly. And at the end of our day, Monty went ahead and scraped off the caps of some of the frames with honey on them so that the bees could go ahead and take that and kind of transfer it over to the new hives. But what we were looking to transfer was the brood, and the queen and the brood were the big things that we needed to get transferred over. So we were ready. We had our skill saws and drill drivers and screws ready to go ahead and cut the frames and secure them into Layens frames. But when we got down to the last box in the LANGSTROTH hive, there was 0 brood in it. So that made things really easy in the sense that we didn't have to cut and transfer any frames over. But the problem was there was no brood. But we were able to take out the frames one by one and inspect them. I saw a couple hive beetles, but not very many at all. The bees were pretty docile overall, considering the fact that I was destroying their home. And we were able to just shake them into the new hive. This was my first time looking at so many bees up close all at the same time. And it was a really neat experience seeing thousands of bees just buzzing around, doing their work, going from cell to cell, bringing in pollen. So that was pretty neat for me. Meanwhile, I was using this little putty knife because I didn't have a hive tool because I couldn't find it. Because 1 is none and 2 is 1, guys. So between that and my rubber gloves, I was a little bit of a novice, but I'm working my way up. So now tip number 3 here is to use smoke. I approached natural beekeeping and that maybe led me to think, oh, it's natural, don't smoke them if you don't need to, just get in there and do what you need to do. But I've been learning quickly that the smoke is really advantageous for everybody. It blocks the smells that the bees release, as Monty was telling me, so that they aren't as prone to pass the scents along to others to come and attack the beekeeper or whoever else is around. But also, it gets them out of the way. I have done a hive inspection, a couple hive inspections since this video, and I wasn't using smoke. And I was waiting for the bees to move and waiting for them to move before putting the frame back down, and they just don't move. And so then I end up crushing some of them, and then they end up getting all up in my face because they're mad because I killed some of their sisters. So don't try to be a hero like I was. Just use the smoke. It's better for everybody. Hey, you. Yeah, you. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hey, if you enjoyed it or learned something, can you just like it down below? Thanks. So then Monty gave me a chance using his hive tool to go ahead and peel some of those frames apart, and it was really neat to pick up my first frame full of bees and then go ahead and shake it into the horizontal hive. And like I said, we just had propolis coming out of our ears here. I mean, check out this frame when we start to peel it up, and that propolis just looks like glue, just stretching. Did you see that? Let's take a look again. Incredible. This is the frame where Monty found an opened queen cell. So that may have been the emergency queen that we ended up finding later. And then on the next frame, that's where we spotted the queen. Okay, so take a look. Do you see her? If not, you can pause it now because I'm about to show you where the emergency queen is. Okay, and there she is. So we were able to tell that she was a virgin queen because of the size of her abdomen that was pretty small, and she was super quick. So at first we wondered if she was just a virgin queen and she was going to go and be able to do her mating flight and everything would be fine, but that wouldn't have explained the lack of brood. So I'm guessing that the queen died at some point a couple months ago and obviously hadn't been laying. Monty was able to talk to somebody named Wes, but Wes identified the problem right away as a caste split where a worker laid the queen, which means a doomed colony unless we intervene. So the hive had a caste split queen from a worker and no brood. Once we found the queen, we were able to put her in a clip and gently place her into the hive to encourage everybody else to go and stay over there, which was great. So we kept working along, and I realized very quickly that the totes that I grabbed to put all the frames in were completely inadequate for the amount of frames that we were collecting. Oh well. Now this is kind of the embarrassing part about what we were doing, was we were getting the bees shaken off into the horizontal hive, working carefully, everything was going great. But as we were getting the frames moved around in the horizontal hive, we kept hearing like some crunching, and we were kind of thinking, why is this happening? There should be some space at the bottom. What's going on? Are the bees just super compacted at the bottom of the hive? And it wasn't until we were almost done that I realized, oh no, I had left the divider board that you're supposed to take out underneath the frames. So that's my next tip. Tip number 4 is make sure you take out the divider board from your horizontal hive. I think they're only in the 20 frame hives, but that divider board is there to take out and to be able to use for splits or overwintering or whatever. So make sure you take that out. So we ended up needing to take out all the frames that we had just been shuffling around and frustrate the bees even more, take out the divider board, put everything back in, and then we were able to keep going. So as you can imagine, by this time the bees were not particularly happy. They were even hanging out on my jacket, which is kind of neat to look at now, but they weren't very happy. And then Monty went ahead and scraped the caps, and we let the bees go to work. So this final step was Monty picking up that last box of the Langstroth hive and just shaking it into the colony of the new horizontal hive, and we finally got them all closed up, and we put the stragglers right below the entrance, and then eventually I did take the lid from the Langstroth hive as a little ramp to get up into the sun and moon hive. And so those frames that we had given back to the bees, we put in one of the Langstroth boxes, and as you can see, Monty's just putting it on top of the 20 frame hive. And then we just gave some time for the bees to make their new house a home. Now the next day I did find what seemed like quite a few dead bees, and so it sounded like maybe there was some robbing going on with the honey that we left out for them to transfer over. But it did seem like a couple days later, everybody had pretty well settled down. So that was step one, the easy step. So now step two is to see if we can keep this colony alive by giving them a virgin queen. So it so happens that in Bloomfield, which is just about an hour and 15 minutes away from me, there's somebody who raises treatment-free queens. So I'm gonna go pick one of those up and introduce it to the colony, and hopefully the colony will survive. But the queen bee that I'm gonna purchase is only $25, so even if it still fails, I'm only out $25 and a little bit of driving time. So that's gonna be step two. So stick around and we'll see what happens. And I got my buddy here today as usual, making sure everything's okay. Junebug! Good girl. Come here, Junebug. Oh, hey, sweetie. My daughter did get stung twice, but I think Junebug got stung way more than anybody else. I think she received several bee stings throughout our conversion process, so I think she's a little bit more careful around the bees now.